Now I'm being told what we're on. Hi, folks. I'm expecting some opening music. Arlo, you can just kick that in at any moment if you can make it happen. That's a bit of technical problem.
It's on, just me. It's on.
Tell us when the music is over. Okay, good morning, everyone. We weren't at all sure that we were going to be on this week at all, so technical problems aside, we're happy to be here. In fact, since we weren't sure we were going to be on at all, I didn't go to the trouble of setting up a guest, and yet there was a party going on last night, and Ashley here suggested that we ought to have a big gathering of everybody who'd show up, and that's what we got. And look at this turnout. This is like not even one of our solstice deals. This is just the people that are willing at a moment's notice to show up here on a rainy Sunday morning. So thanks everybody for being here. In fact, there's more that are going to be filtering in over the next few minutes. Welcome to the Atheist Experience. This show was brought to you by the Atheist Community of Austin. I'm your host, Jeff Dee. My co-host at the far end of the row is Martin Wagner. And our guests today are members of the Atheist Community of Austin. We're live July 30, 2000 CE. The Atheist Community of Austin is a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. We've got weekly meetings every Sunday morning at the Hot Jumbo Bagel Shop at 307 West 5th Street at 10:30 a.m. right after this show, except for the first Sunday of each month when we have our lecture series at 11 a.m. in the Longhorn Room of Furs Cafeteria at North Cross Mall. Our next lecture will be next Sunday, August 6th, and the speaker will be our own Arlo Pignati, showing off his collection of wacky religious paraphernalia.
Yay, Arlo! That's always fun.
Just to give people a heads up, we've got some really even more exciting, no offense to Arlo, even more exciting speakers lined up for the coming months. On September 3rd, our speaker will be Dr. William Coker of the Department of Physics at the University of Texas at Austin. The title of his talk will be Fake Science, Anti-Science, and Ignored Science. Dr. Coker has taught, among other things, a class entitled Pseudoscience, which is for non-science majors, giving them a heads up on what sort of false scientific claims to look out for. On October 1, the speaker will be Ray Mooney of UT's Department of Computer Science. His topic is titled Artificial Intelligence, Minds Without Mysticism. ACA board meetings take place at noon right after our regular meeting on the second Sunday of every month. These meetings are open to all ACA members, but you can only vote if you're on the board of directors. The next board meeting will be on August 13. Those of you who shop at Randall's can give them our nonprofit organization number, which is 5158. And have 1% of your purchase donated to the Atheist Community of Austin. For other information, you can call our voicemail at 371-2911 or visit our website at www.atheist-community.org. And that's it for the standard announcements. Let's go to Martin Wagner now for news.
Good morning, everybody. Morning, Jeff. Okay, here is the news for this morning. And hopefully someone will get me on a camera here. But I'll go ahead and start. The House has passed a resolution to acknowledge the motto for the government of a religious people. Apparently, the U.S. House of Representatives last Monday approved a resolution, House Resolution 548, encouraging display of the "In God We Trust" motto in public buildings. Representative Bob Schaefer, a Republican from Colorado, declared that the motto, quote, unites us as a people and has made us the greatest country on the planet. Apparently, none of our politicians, none of our economic systems, none of our wars and victories in battle or anything like that, none of that's had anything to do with us being a great nation. It's the godly motto. We should not run from it, he further says. We should embrace and endorse it. The move comes after the Board of Education in Schaefer's home state of Colorado recently adopted a similar resolution urging that the slogan be posted in public schools and other government buildings. In a brief series of exchanges with Representative Bobby Scott, a Democrat from Virginia, the lone opponent of the resolution, Schaefer vacillated between his insistence that the motto was an important religious statement and the claim that it had, quote, nothing to do with religion. Indeed, the resolution stated that, quote, the motto reflects the national sentiment that we are a religious people whose institutions presuppose a supreme being. Taken from the Zorek versus Clausen case in 1952, and the fact that the slogan, quote, serves a secular purpose of expressing confidence in the future and encouraging the recognition of what is worthy of appreciation in society. Will you find me an atheist that thinks religion, and especially Christianity, is worthy of appreciation in our society, and I will eat this news report. Further, back to our friends, the Christian Coalition, whom a couple of weeks ago when Russell was on with me, we reported that they were pretty much kaput as an organization. Well, recent claims by the Christian Coalition that it has won a great victory against the Internal Revenue Service over the issue of the group's tax-exempt status are greatly inflated and inaccurate, says Americans United for Separation of Church and State. Last February, the Christian Coalition, a group founded by TV preacher Pat Robertson, sued the IRS in federal court, claiming that the federal tax agency discriminated against the organization by denying it a 501c4 tax exemption in 1999. This week, the IRS agreed to settle the case by conceding that the coalition was tax exempt, but only for the year 1990. The tax agency agreed to refund the organization $169.26 in taxes.
I got more than that.
Well, Pat will be able to take him and his buddies out to...
well, no, actually, the award apparently won't pay for a tank of fuel on Pat Robertson's jets, says Barry Lynn of the AU. But the Christian Coalition is using every legal shenanigan to confuse the public about its partisan political character. I don't consider, says Barry Lynn, a $169 refund much of a victory. Jay Sekulow, chief counsel and chief whiner of Pat Robertson's legal group, the American Center for Law and Justice, that was me editorializing, by the way, represented the Christian Coalition in the case. Yesterday, Sekulow told reporters that the group had gotten, quote, everything we asked for.
Wasn't Sekulow the guy on the Santa Fe case?
Yeah, and he's on TBN all the time. He's this big legal shill for the Christian right. And, well, that's just like spin control taken to a whole new quantum level there. AU's Lynn disagreed. This is nonsense, Lynn said. The coalition argued that that major parts of the tax code were an unconstitutional restriction of free speech. But that argument went nowhere. They also insisted that it was targeted because of its conservative political beliefs, but that claim was a dud as well. Lynn said religious leaders should not be fooled by coalition rhetoric. Quote, religious leaders who choose to align with Robertson and distribute the organization's biased and slanted voter guides in church are still jeopardizing their own tax-exempt status. Americans United is a religious liberty watchdog group based in Washington, D.C. Founded in 1947, the organization represents 60,000 members and allied houses of worship in all 50 states. That's worth pointing out. The Americans United for Separation of Church and State is not an atheist organization. And finally, here's something interesting going on in California. A California ballot proposal seeks to create the nation's largest school voucher program, covering as many as 6.5 million children who would be sent to private schools by parents using taxpayer money. Proposition 38 would give parents $4,000 per pupil to send their children into private schools, including religious ones. Parents would get the vouchers regardless of family income. So that is bound to generate a great deal of heated controversy on both sides. And that is the news for this morning.
Thank you, Martin.
You're welcome.
Now on to our special announcements. First of all, I've just been informed that thanks to a blown fuse, we are not going to be able to get any audio over our studio speakers in here, which means we can't hear whether there's any music or sound effects, and we can't hear any callers.
Oh, great!
Because the way we hear them is they come in over the mic, over the speakers here in the studio, and we respond to that. I don't know if there's any chance of that problem getting corrected. If it does get corrected, we will put the phone number up there and you can call in and ask us your questions. In the meanwhile, we're just going to have to do this show without any live input, which is a terrible shame. So, on to our regular announcements. We had our quarterly blood drive yesterday, thanks to Vic Farrow for organizing that. We had a turnout of, 5 of us? A couple of people on the sign-up sheet didn't show up, but one of them's operating camera right there.
No, I went early.
You went early?
Yep.
Okay, we just missed you. Okay, so 6. And I know Michelle right here behind me begged off for health reasons. She's allergic to getting her blood drained. But that went great. I took some digital photos, which we'll have Russell put on the website if we can get him to do that.
Cool.
Let's see. We don't hate you. We just think you're wrong. Buttons are still. We still have these.
I didn't wear mine. Damn it.
You didn't wear yours? Do you have a supply on?
I have
you
my
in case-
supply. Yes, I do.
If you see me or my co-host Martin out in public and you come up and say you watch the show and like it, we'll give you a button that says, "We don't hate you. We just think you're wrong." Our show's motto.
And if you're a Christian, you want to come up and yell at us, we'll give you 2 buttons.
Well, we'll give you a button even if you don't like the show, but we just don't expect you to accept it. Okay, the Center for Inquiry will be offering a course in Austin. The Committee for the Scientific Investigation of Claims of the Paranormal and the Council for Secular Humanism will be offering a class entitled The Scientific Examination of the Bible, Paul, Jesus, and the Facts at the Omni Austin Hotel South Park on September 22 to 24 of this year. You'll have to go to their website for the fees. There is a fee to get in. And there's also a banquet on that Saturday, which also has a fee. Any instances of slurs, defamation, or discrimination against atheists or other non-believers in the U.S. media can now be reported to the National Atheist Ombuds by emailing ombuds, that's OMBUDS, at atheism.org. Please remember to include as many details as possible and a news source where applicable. Incidents will be reported to participating national and local non-theist organizations who have agreed to distribute press releases regarding the reported subject matter. And in all honesty, those kinds of things don't get into the media that often, but when they do, I think it's about time we had a organization to respond to that. And that's it for the regular announcements. Now, we've got some old business. This will help us fill some airtime without callers. We've got some old business to get into.
Yeah, and apparently we are working on that fuse problem, so.
Great.
Yeah.
We are hoping that we'll be able to get back to callers at some point. Last week, we showed this flyer, which was distributed at the Dragon Con Science Fiction Convention, and possibly other places, but that's the one we know of. It's basically Christian propaganda targeting Trekkies. On one side, it's 5 ways Starfleet and the Kingdom of Heaven are alike. Apparently, the argument there, the implied argument being,
First and foremost is that they're both fictional.
that one didn't make it onto their list, apparently.
Puzzling, yeah. Oh well.
And of course, they also missed the fact that the Star Trek's Prime Directive, as propped up and goofy as that was on the show, would prohibit the proselytizing of your religion to, say, less technologically advanced African civilizations, let alone space aliens and other planets. So,
and I'm sure they definitely have a problem with wiping out civilizations who don't believe in them.
But then that
So
too.
that's
of course.
just nagging little side point. But
And on the flip side, there's the anthropic theory, scientific proof that there is a creator, which is that all that bunk about, well, we don't know why things are the way they are, therefore a God must have made them that way. I was
That makes
challenged.
perfect sense.
Huh?
That makes perfect sense.
I was challenged by a caller last week who I don't think I responded clearly, and I want to take this opportunity to clarify my position. He asked, why do we think that it's wrong to try to spread your beliefs? And I want to make it clear, I don't think that's wrong. I don't think there's anything. In fact, I think that if you're a person who believes that you have got hold of the right way to look at things, I think that if you care at all about the welfare of your fellow man, you have an ethical imperative to go out and try to get other people to see the things the way you do. This gets me into trouble with a lot of atheists because, of course, that's exactly what Christianity does. What I think is wrong with this is not that they are trying to convert people. What I think is wrong with this is that this is completely stupid. Okay? And I just want to make that point. I mean, yes, it's you have a right to go out and try to get people to agree with your point of view, but they have an equal right when they hear your arguments to poke the obvious holes in them if they can. Then I was handed this book by one of our group members. This is Evolution and the Myth of Creationism, a basic guide to the facts in the evolution debate. There we go. And we had a caller last week who mentioned in passing Archaeopteryx, and of course we were going to wait if we got phone calls. That fella Steve would probably try to call again, and we apologize for not being able to take calls at this time. But we can read this paragraph out of this book, which addresses the apparent claims by some creationists that Archaeopteryx is a fraud. Archaeopteryx has recently been subjected to a careful re-examination because of allegations by British astronomer Fred Hoyle and mathematician Chandra Wagner Singh that the fossil's feather impressions are a forgery. Hoyle and Wagner Singh, it should be noted, have no expertise in biology or paleontology, do not understand natural selection, and have espoused a variety of anti-evolutionary ideas. Because these allegations, regardless of their lack of merit, could give aid and comfort to the creationists, scientists at the British Museum of Natural History subjected Archaeopteryx to a battery of tests that confirmed its authenticity beyond doubt. In one such test, hairline cracks on feathered areas of opposing slabs of the fossil were exactly matched. That's, when they uncover fossils by chipping away layers of rock, right? And they found that you take this one off, and the places where there's indentations on the Archaeopteryx fossil exactly match places where on this side there are impressions of the layer above, which of course you couldn't get from chipping away stone. This rules out Hoyle's claim that modern feathers were pressed into an artificial cement layer. No such layer was present. The complete tests are described in an article by Charing et al. In Science magazine, 1986, issue 232, pages 622 to 625. In November 1987, a new specimen of Archaeopteryx, the sixth and largest known specimen, was discovered in a private collection in Solnhofen, West Germany. See Wellenhofer in Science magazine, 1988, issue 240. In the Solnhofen fossils are imprints of feather shafts, further supporting the fact that the feather impressions on the other specimens are not forgeries, as Hoyle and Wagner Singh have alleged. Hoyle's motives are unclear, but he would not for a moment brook a comparable challenge in his own area of expertise. His claim demonstrates what can happen when a scientist makes uninformed remarks about a subject in which he is unqualified. So,
I think that brings up a really good point, Jeff. One of our callers last week was bringing up various creationists and their advanced degrees, and one of the few guys who actually had a legitimate degree, his degree was actually in mechanical engineering.
Right,
but because it was a PhD, right. Our caller made the fallacy. It's, he's got a PhD, so he knows everything about everything. And
right, no.
It's not
he knows field. Things about what he knows about.
Yeah, that's the ticket.
All right.
And a mechanical engineer knows mechanical engineering, not biology or astrophysics or any of that.
Now, Russell, you also had some rebuttals for.
As a matter of fact, I do. Last week it was mentioned that there was a sea monster that was claimed to be a plesiosaur by Kent Hovind, the same joker who offered that bogus 10,000 or whatever it was,
and whose own PhD claims challenge. Are fraudulent.
Right.
Yeah. You got a man with a PhD.
Steve, when he came on the air, claimed that no one looking at these pictures could say that they were they could possibly be anything other than a plesiosaur.
And here they
Close
are.
up on this.
Yeah, let's just tighten up on that. And
Hold it steady.
We'll focus
And
it
out.
we'll focus, please.
It's clearly a pile of rotting flesh.
Hold it still. Getting
are.
it focused there.
Yeah.
And there's something which could be looked at as a head right here.
yeah, I mean, you can
here's another
see
shot.
using your imagination.
And here's another
Move your
shot.
fingers out of the way.
It's
And what bits are
it's
supposed to be what?
So I'm not quite
well,
sure.
I guess
but you
that's
can
like
see
the
the
head
head.
part, and
That's
that's like the
behind it,
finny
you can see
flipper
that's
part.
Oh, I see.
so
Those are
very
meant to be
decomposed
flippers.
that it's kind of hard to make anything out of it.
It's
However,
puzzle butt.
here's a whoops. Here's a scale drawing. Now, this is not intended to be scientifically a proof of anything, but it's just taken off of what the scale of this thing is based on its surroundings, and the scale of what the shark, the scale of how big a shark is, a basking shark, as a matter of fact.
Uh-huh.
And as you can see, the dimensions of this thing fit pretty neatly inside the dimensions of a shark, at least according to this guess drawing, more or less.
Okay.
And now what looks like the head, is that in reality, would that be, what, the spine?
Yeah, I guess it would be like this. The end of
It's
the
like
skull,
the top
column,
half of the
ending in
head.
the skull or
It's
something.
important to remember that shark do not have
Skeleton.
skeletons,
Yeah.
cartilage, right?
Cartilage,
Yeah.
skeleton.
They do have
And
skeletons,
so-
but they're cartilage, not bone.
Yeah.
They have both?
They
Well,
have,
they
have
cartilage,
skeletons,
yeah.
but it's cartilage, not bone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Skeletons made of cartilage, which, in which case it would be less surprising that whole hunks of skeleton, like the jawbone, might be missing.
Yeah. Now, it's also worth noting that since this thing gained publicity, a lot of alleged plesiosaurs have been dragged out of the sea and brought to scientists to look at, and they've all been pronounced basking sharks after undergoing scientific tests. So,
But that just proves that basking sharks are actually plesiosaurs,
There you go.
could be.
Yeah. right? I mean, anything to...
No.
I'm
see.
playing
Okay.
idiot's advocate here, so
Yeah.
play along.
Moving on to Archaeopteryx, which Steve was going to bring up if we hadn't stopped him for time.
Right.
A lot of the claims about how Archaeopteryx are really a bird come from Gish. And basically...
Another creationist with fake credentials.
Right. Basically, what the party line on the Archaeopteryx is well, I mean, scientists who have studied Archaeopteryx, it's apparent that Archaeopteryx has certain features on it that are clearly only found in birds, but it also has certain features on it that are clearly only found in reptiles. But if you're a creationist, all you have to do is ignore the half that looks like a reptile and say, look, it has feathers and you know, all these other things. It's clearly a bird. I've got this quote here from Dwayne Gish saying, from the reconstruction shown in Figure 11, it is obvious that Archaeopteryx was very much a bird. Equipped with a bird-like skull, perching feet, wings, feathers, and a furcula or wishbone. Now the figure reprinted here, which I didn't bother to blow up and show on camera, it says, is taken from Lull 1940. However, the caption to Plate 14 cites Heilmann as the source. Dr. Gish's Figure 11 is in fact a painting by Heilmann from the frontispiece of his 1926 book, The Origin of Birds. Lull describes the figure, quote, these first birds, of which but 2 or 3 specimens have been recovered, are known as Archaeopteryx and Archaeornis, are so reptile-like that were it not for the preserved feathers, it is doubtful whether they could surely be proved to be birds. Prophetic words, since in 1940 a specimen of Archaeopteryx lay in the Harlem Museum, misidentified as a pterosaur, and more recently, the Solnhofen specimen was recognized as being an Archaeopteryx after being originally identified as the small dinosaur Compsognathus. So, a lot of these Archaeopteryxes, despite being clearly birds, according to Gish, continually get mislabeled and misrepresented
And
as
you're saying in the
reptiles.
1920s book that the painting is from, they were saying that they're clearly got reptilian features?
Right. the
Okay, so the book that the painting is from
Yes.
disputes Gish. Okay.
It was
Right.
obvious in the 20s. It's still
Right.
obvious now.
Uh-huh.
These guys are working really hard not
And
to see
this,
the obvious.
this final paragraph in this selection, which I love, is Dr. Gish not only ignores Lull's clear proclamation concerning the reptilian nature of Archaeopteryx, but uses a 70-year-old painting of Archaeopteryx drawn as a bird to show that Archaeopteryx was very much a bird. Presumably by the same logic, Barney proves that dinosaurs were purple.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now that something else occurred to me about the whole plesiosaur argument, right? Even if we pretend for a moment that we've found the remains of a plesiosaur that was living, 30, 40 years ago. So what? We have also found coelacanths. What about the coelacanths? Right? Yeah. Those were a species that were thought to be extinct, and yet we found a few of them still in the Indian Ocean.
Still someone.
And what did that prove? Well, only that it is possible for some species to linger on for a long time in little pockets where we don't find them right away. So what? Right? The discovery of the coelacanth didn't overturn paleontology. Why would the discovery of a plesiosaur do it? It's just ridiculous. It seems to me these arguments are not so much directed at an honest attempt to discover, to uncover new facts and form the theories that fit those new facts, as they are to merely mollify the urges of creationists. They wanted to have just enough evidentiary support that they can go on they can feel justified going on believing what they believe.
I think a lot of the criticisms of evolution by the creationists are based on these really...
Can you speak a little louder? You're probably not picking it up very well.
I think a lot of the criticisms of evolution by creationists are based on fundamental misrepresentations like this of what evolutionary theory is about. That a lot of them basically take this line that, evolution is about progress, and therefore you're not going to have anything old because survival of the fittest and progress would mean that the old things aren't still around. But of course, that's not how evolution works at all. Evolution isn't necessarily about what we would call progress. For example, the oldest things in the world are bacteria, and bacteria still outnumber us and outweigh us by a large margin, because that's a really good design for an organism if its only purpose is to survive. And that is what evolution is about. And similarly, cockroaches, they're way older than us, and they'll be here long after us if, by the way things look. Basically, it's a very robust design. And what happens with species like this is, as other things evolve, basically, the only clear sense of progress in evolution is a kind of diversification. And a competitive strategy in evolution sometimes means that you get better at something than some other species, and you take away their role in the ecosystem. You take over their niche. But another good strategy in evolution is to find a different niche where there's no competition. So like birds learning to fly, they get to be in the air where there's no predators, and then they get to become predators and things like that. So evolution is largely about diversification. And the old designs that are really good for something, that continue to be good at what they do, like crocodiles and cockroaches and bacteria, well, their ranges are restricted by other things that are better at some things than them. That there aren't as many crocodiles as there used to be. And there's various kinds of niches in the ecosystem that used to be filled by bacteria and are now filled by something else. But it's a lot like capitalism. And one of the ironies is that a whole lot of these creationists who are against evolution are very pro-capitalism for Darwinian reasons, that they think that capitalism guarantees progress because of this competitive stuff. And of course, that was one of the things that inspired Darwin to come up with the theory of evolution. And you have these people saying, we should have this very capitalist society and it'll work really well, but they can't give the same credit to evolution when it's basically the same idea. But just like in capitalism, you do have things that the way to make money is often not to compete against whoever's best at something, but to find something else to do that people will pay for. And evolution works basically the same way. A lot of species just invent a new role and do that instead.
Yeah. Here's a little something. Last week after the show, just on a lark, my wife and I suggested that we should arrange a trip out to see the dinosaur footprints, not at Dinosaur Valley State Park in Glen Rose, but the ones just a little ways north of Leander. And now I don't have, just found out that I don't have my page bookmarked, but I'll look for this and give you the rest of the information. There are dinosaur footprints that you can go and look at yourself for free, not far outside of town. They're not, there we go. They're not very distinct. And there's a lot of impressions in the sediment that are so indistinct that you can't tell what the heck they are. So be warned when you get out there that you're going to have to look real hard for something that's really convincing enough to seriously accept as dinosaur footprints. But you can find it if you look carefully. It's at the South San Gabriel River, just north of Leander. Just park your car at the South San Gabriel River Bridge and walk upstream for half a mile. And there are 3-toed dinosaur tracks. There's a phone number here, and I don't know what that phone number is for. We didn't call it. My guess is it's going to be like the Leander Chamber of Commerce or something, somebody who can tell you what this is all about. But that number is 259-1907. Once again, the dinosaur tracks that you can go see yourself. And by the way, there's nothing that convincingly looks like human footprints there.
And what was the story you told us about that? You saw that woman and her children there one time?
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah, I'll tell the story again. I've told this before on the show. Last time we were there, we on the way out, this family showed up, this woman with her little kids, to go swimming in the stream. And we were leaving, and they were just arriving, and we said, "Hey, folks, have you seen the dinosaur footprints?" And the woman clutches one of her kids to her and says, "What? Dinosaur footprints? They're along the beach up there about half a mile." And she looked around with this terrified expression on her face and said, "Are they still here?" Just goes to show the very poor state of science education in this country. Anyway, I need to admit that our trip last week to see the dinosaur footprints failed utterly because we didn't have this guidebook with us, and so we went on our memory and we completely failed to find them. But yesterday we pulled out the guide and went and looked.
You could have carved some to piss off Steve.
Well, it's not a surprise that this place is no tourist attraction because they're that indistinct. It's really hard to tell.
When Ginny and I went to Biloxi and went to the tourist trap at the riverbed, we passed on the road several times a Creation Science Museum, I believe.
Yeah, that's where it is. That's where they have the fake dinosaur footprints,
It's a tourist attraction for that reason, maybe.
Well,
You know,
this one is free, and like I said, it's no surprise because you're going to have to be very, very critical in your examination of the footprints to weed out the ones that really are something. You gotta look for a clear stride because there are a lot of just ruts or holes that are sort of misshapen and you can't tell what they are. If it's one by itself, that's not good enough. If you get a series and they're spaced like the stride of a creature, right, and not all in one line like a wagon rut, but offset in a clear walking pattern, that's a good clue. What else we got?
Jeff, I wanted to reinforce what you were talking about earlier, about how creationism really is not about the discovery of knowledge or the exploration of knowledge or the expansion of scientific facts or anything. I fully agree with that. I think that really what creationism is about is simply defending the faith, like another show that you can watch on our fine cable system. It's because remember what Christians have. They have this belief system that says that the whole universe and absolutely everything that exists in it was made by this great big invisible man, who happens to be your best friend. You know, that's a very ego-gratifying position to live your life with. And especially when it has been pounded in your head by your parents, by your culture since infancy, and you come to swallow this whole line of thinking, any sort of scientific discovery that would challenge that will be perceived almost as a personal attack. And so what you now have is this whole attempt to, oh no, well, this is threatening my belief system, but I know that if I want to sound intelligent to these guys who are threatening my belief system, I need to sound intelligent too. So I'm going to come up with all of this jargon and all of this lingo and all of these strange arguments to sort of preserve what I believe about myself and about my place in the universe, which is kind of like, here's the universe and you're not too far, you know, you're kind of up there with it. So there's really nothing about creationism that's scientific, and I think that's why creationism can't get a foothold in the schools.
Yeah.
And another reason, and it's another reason why, of course, legitimate science doesn't take creationism seriously, and it's also because what creationism does, even if you were to say, all right, well, let's look at this and see how scientifically valid it is, it's not. Because what it does is it sort of plays the whole scientific method in reverse. What science does is you have a guy who starts out with a theory, and then he goes out and he collects all this evidence, and then based on the evidence he comes up with a conclusion, and then his peers check him out, and then they see what conclusions they, you know, arrive at, and then only then can you be said to have reached a decision about something. Well, what creationism does is it starts with the decision. It starts with the conclusion. There's a God and he made everything. And then they work backwards and they only collect the evidence that they feel supports that, and they reject everything else. And that's just not scientific, not even remotely scientific.
And I think one of the pieces of evidence for that is this weird thing with the young Earth creationists and the old Earth creationists. That basically, for a long time, in America at least, a lot of the fundamentalists were young Earth creationists, and a bunch of them still are. They say the world is only 6,000 years old or something, despite absolutely overwhelming geological evidence that that's false. And in the last couple decades, a lot of them have changed their tack, and they say, oh yeah, evolution really did happen, which it obviously did from the fossil record, but God sticks his finger in and diddles with it, and God had to stick his finger in and diddle with it to make it really work. And so you have this weird coalition between people who think that the world is 6,000 years old and people who think it's 4.5 billion years old. And they are more interested in agreeing on the fact that the God of the Bible is the one true God than on settling their differences about that. That, you know, the old Earth creationists don't go around saying, of course young Earth creationism is moronic. And the young Earth creationists, in general, don't attack the old Earth creationists because they're all on the same side, because of what's important to all of them is that the Bible be presented as true.
Right. And that was another thing I wanted to respond to what Russell was saying. What creationists do is not about really learning anything. It's about coming up with a justification for going on believing what they already believe. But there is a further consequence of that, okay? When they are in the majority, which of course it's easier for them to be when, just in the general public, when we have a population of scientifically illiterate people who only get their science from these half-assed justifications that the creationists come up with, right? Why then they can try to vote on what is proper science, and that's the consequence that we're seeing. They're forcing it down other people's throats. If all they wanted to do was just go on believing what they believe, I have no problem with that. They're free to go on believing what they believe. It's when they try to use politics to tell us what is justifiable science and what isn't, that's when we have a problem.
Yeah. And another criticism that I have, of course, is just that a lot of these guys want to talk the talk about intellectual honesty, but of course they just don't walk the walk. There is a show on Trinity called Reasons to Believe, where they have these guys who are, one of them's an astronomer, and another one is in some other field, I think a sociologist. And they sit there and they mention, at the very least they acknowledge all the various atheist criticisms of the Christian belief system, but they don't really address them effectively, and when they do address them, they address them very feebly. For example, one of their defenses of the whole problem of evil discussing natural evils. Okay, for example, why would this omniscient, omnipotent, omnibenevolent God still have this world in which horrible natural disasters like earthquakes and hurricanes and tornadoes happen that kill people? And they said, that's a really good point. That's and they were appearing to be very open-minded about this, but then they just started offering all of these absurd rationales for why these things happen. One fellow even mentioned that, one thing that earthquakes do is that they recirculate minerals throughout the Earth's crust. And I'm like, okay,
That's the best you can do.
yeah, okay, so there's this omniscient, omnipotent, omnibenevolent God who can't figure out a way to recirculate minerals through the Earth's crust other than by causing a great natural disaster that kills tens of thousands of these people whom he supposedly unconditionally loves.
Just have naturally occurring mine shafts so we can get down to where they are. Then he doesn't have to have any circulation of minerals, and then thousands of people don't have to die when earthquakes happen.
I mean, just the justifications that they make are absurd on the face of them, but they really want to make them, they try to make them with a straight face, and it's very clear. I think as George Smith points out, he said, this is evidence that there is nothing that the Christian will accept that will point out flaws in their belief system that might get them to think, oh, well, maybe this God I worship is either just blatantly evil, or probably just doesn't exist altogether.
Speaking of bad science,
Oh, good.
Russell brought this in. Thanks, Russell. I just
welcome.
desperately needed another one of these. A couple of months back, we reviewed a book called God Made Outer Space. Now, when I say book, I mean it's a little kiddie book here for little tiny children.
It's a tract for kids.
What that was the stupidest backward astronomy you could possibly imagine, all for the sake of propping up belief in God. Okay, well, here's another one in that fine series by Hino Head Jr.
What a Hino head.
God Made the Ocean, it's called. And now, oceanography is not really something I know a lot about, so I'm afraid I can't give you a real solid debunking of the claims in here, though I could count the number of times they mention God, and it's way up there. What I'll do is take this to my wife, who I think knows a lot more about this than I do, and maybe we'll have her on to talk about it in future. But it's by Hino Head Jr. The scariest thing for me is there's a on the title page it says for Hino II and Laney. Now wait a minute. The author is Hino Head Jr. And then are we to understand that he procreated and named his son Hino II? Wouldn't that be Hino III? Or in fact, did he dedicate this book to himself? That's hard to tell.
Actually, if he's a young Earth creationist, he probably does have difficulty counting.
Well, it's like that multiple lineages for Jesus kind of thing in the Bible, right? But here is one thing that's just too uproarious to miss. There's a picture of Hino Head Jr. here in his lab coat looking thing, because that proves that he's a scientist and knows what he's talking about, with a bunch of kids at the aquarium. And it says, God could have made just one kind of ocean animal. He could have made just one kind of fish, or one kind of crab, or one kind of whale. But he didn't. He made thousands of kinds of animals for us to enjoy, just because he loves us. But what's
Like the
amazing is that the
jellyfish, the
picture,
great white shark.
and can we get a close-up on camera one? The picture is of Hino pointing at the shark. God loves us so much that he put, among the thousands of kinds of animals he made, he put sharks that will chew you up and eat you horribly. Of course, I'm being unfair to sharks because, in fact, shark attacks are incredibly rare, but...
And if you look at it, all the creatures in that picture are not exactly the friendliest things in the ocean.
But
that's true.
Squids are fairly nasty
Yeah, they're even
things.
nasty.
to get
And there's an
stories.
electric eel.
And an
of
eel
course, they
there
are
also.
they are all smiling, at least the ones that
Okay,
have
yes,
mouths.
yes.
A smiling, happy shark with his razor-sharp teeth.
See, that's another way they
And a
take care of the
smiling,
problem of
happy
evil.
electric eel. Amazing. Oh my gosh.
There's more.
Oh, keep going.
There's a
Do the
list in
voices.
here of
Jeez.
books from Happy Day Books. This says simple science for kids.
Yes,
And,
simple is
judging
right.
by the previous book, again, I'm not qualified to judge this one, but judging by God Made Outer Space, it's not even simple science, it's non-science.
Science made as simple as possible, and then a lot simpler.
I'm just waiting for him to come out.
Wait a minute, look what's on the back cover. There's Hino buried up to his neck in sand, and this crab is coming at him with his pincers. And the little kids who love him so much are sitting back laughing. They're tickling his toes.
The irony is just
while the
delicious.
crab comes at him with his pincers.
Oh.
See, folks, this is
Maybe
what my
these are.
lecture's
Wait a
gonna
minute.
be about
Maybe these
next
are
week.
jokes. It just suddenly occurs to me. Maybe these are intentionally made silly by somebody.
Or stealth
Definitely not.
atheism. It's mental.
Stealth, you think so? Maybe to just tell
Who knows?
kids such stupid things that even they'll be able to see through it? Possibly.
Let's go from bad science to good science, just so we have a brain break. This
All
is,
right.
let's get a tighten up on camera 3 with this one. Here's some very highly recommended reading from your friend and mine, Richard Dawkins. His newest book, recently out of paperback, Unweaving the Rainbow. And this is Dawkins' sort of a version of a little similar theme to Carl Sagan's Demon Haunted World, talking about the value of what real science has to teach us as opposed to the complete crap that paranormalism and supernaturalism has to offer us. And he doesn't deal quite so much with creationism in this book as he does with just other ridiculous belief systems. And then he goes and says, well, this is what the real scientific facts are, and aren't these like 5,000 times more amazing? And when you realize how the world and the universe really works, why would anyone find this sort of mindless nonsense remotely appealing or fulfilling? And another thing I also thought I'd do is let's offer our viewers at home just a list of some really cool and very highly informative websites that you can go to check some stuff out of both the scientific bent, and Vic can get those up on the screen for us here in just a second. There they all are. Some really, really good ones. And why don't you've got probably a bunch. You've been through a bunch more of these than I have, Russell, probably in detail. Talk Origins is specifically about the creation evolution controversy. Skeptic.com, which I actually discovered off Russell's links page, is the Skeptic's Dictionary, which is why it's skeptic. And this goes through other sorts of superstitions and paranormal beliefs, as well as and New Age beliefs, things like that, in addition to religious beliefs. SkepticsAnnotededBible.com is the complete text of the Bible with all sorts of hyperlinks to pointing out various inconsistencies, irregularities, contradictions, just patently strange stuff. And it cross-references all of these things, so you can just see what a choppy and really bizarrely nonsensical piece of work the Bible is. And then, of course, there's infidels.org, which is a general atheism and secularism site that is updated quite frequently, and they have news, book reviews, information, and it's for example where I get a lot of my news articles that I read on the air every Sunday. So all 4 of these websites, check these out. Whether you're a believer or an unbeliever, especially if you're an unbeliever, you could actually fire a few synapses and learn something. So there you go. Thanks for putting that up there, Vic.
Cool. Thanks, Martin.
You're welcome.
Well.
Let's see. How are we? Presumably, they're still working on the phone fuse situation, folks. So
Yeah,
keep
can we get
watching
an
us.
update on that? Is there any hope now?
Still working on it. It's got one more thing to try.
Okay, still working on it. They got one more thing to
So
try.
keep working on it, and maybe in the last half hour we'll be able to take some calls after all.
I thought maybe this would be a good time to reintroduce some of the information that I garnered over the years. We have, of course, the death toll from the Bible of all of the people killed by God, either directly or on His orders. Anybody want to hear that?
Oh, yeah.
That's always a
always
pretty
a
funny
good one.
read.
It's
Always
always
a
good
good
thing to point out to all these people who think that, Christians who think their God is the fount of all moral goodness.
And if we have time after that, maybe I'll read some of the atheist quotes from famous people who also happen to be atheists. The death toll. Now, first of all, these are all from the Old Testament, because that's what the Old Testament was about. and that's fine. As far as we're concerned, there's no way that Christians can excuse their God by saying that these are from the Old Testament and don't apply anymore, because if this is the same God all along, the guy who did this, yes? I'm being handed a document.
Is that the thing that Keith went home to get for him?
Okay, I will hold on to that and read it when I get a chance. If you're worshiping the same God that did all this stuff, you're gonna have to explain how that makes any sense. There was not chapter and verse on all of these. That's unfortunate. The guy that put this list together and posted it to the web didn't think of that when he went through the first time. And like the first 6 of them do have chapter and verse stuck in, but I'm not going to bother because it doesn't continue through the text. And no, we don't hate God because he killed a bunch of people any more than you hate Darth Vader because he killed a bunch of people. We don't believe he exists, and so we don't have emotional attitudes about him. What we do think is that it's pretty darn ridiculous to be worshiping a deity who is supposed to have done all this stuff. And just remember, these are the same Christians who scream and yell about violence on television. Okay.
Our violence in the schools.
And
Kids
in
killing
schools.
kids, yeah.
And of course they want this God's rules of behavior posted in those schools.
Yeah, the way to stop kids from being killed in the schools is to worship a God who kills kids.
Yeah.
Check out 2 Kings 2, 23 and 24.
Thank you for that chapter and verse.
You're welcome.
Okay, killed by God personally. Unknown number. Drowned everyone in the whole world except for Noah and his family. Turned Lot's wife to salt. That would be 1. Burned all the people of Sodom and Gomorrah except for good Lot, who offered his virgin daughters to a mob of men and then slept with both of them later himself.
He was
Unknown
really
number
drunk.
of people.
It was okay.
Slew Judah's firstborn. That's 1. Er's brother Onan. That's 1. And by the way, Onan. This is like the anti-masturbation verse in the Bible. Masturbation is supposed to be bad because and the proof that masturbation is bad is that God killed Onan, who spilt his seed on the ground rather than impregnate his
sister-in-law,
Onan's brother died, and God wanted an offspring, so he told Onan to go do his brother's wife. And then Onan felt bad about it, and he spilled his seed on the ground, and so God killed him.
So put this little adultery rule in the Bible to the side for just for a moment. Go sleep with her.
Right, that's not against masturbation, that's against the rhythm method. All the firstborn of Egypt, unknown number. Drowned the Pharaoh and all of his gang in the Red Sea, unknown number. Adab and Abihu killed for making a fire, that's 2. Burned some Jews for complaining, unknown number. Sent a plague against Jews for being greedy, unknown number. Sent a plague on Jews who had given the chosen land a bad report, that's 11. Korah and other Jews who didn't like Moses, that's unknown number. 14,700 sent a plague on Jews, apparently for the hell of it. Sent serpents on Jews, all it says is many. Unknown number of Philistines. 50,070 Jews who looked in the Ark of the Covenant. Now, wouldn't you think after the 6th or 7th Jew they'd catch on and stop looking? Killed Nabal for scorning David. Killed Uzzah for touching the ark when all Uzzah was trying to do was keep it from falling over. David and Bathsheba's child killed. That's 1. 70,000 killed in a pestilence sent because King David sinned. Sent fire down on Ahaziah's men. 102. Sent bears to kill children who mocked the prophet Elijah's bald head.
That's the one.
42 children. Sent lions to kill invaders, unknown number. 185,000 Assyrians and lots of bad Israelites.
Hallelujah.
In fact, 80,000 to be precise. Now that's just the ones killed personally by God according to the Old Testament. Now here's the ones that God told the Jews to go kill on his behalf. Jacob's sons killed every man in Shechem, unknown number. 3,000 Jews worshiping the golden calf. 1 man gathering wood on a Sunday. The entire population of Canaan, unknown number. Took the city of Heshbon from the Amorites, unknown number. All the people of Bashan. Jews who followed Baal, 24,000. unknown number of Midianites, that's all of them except for their virgin girls, which of course they kept for their own pleasure.
Yeah.
Everyone in Jericho but Rahab, a hooker who betrayed her city, unknown number. Achan and his family, who had nothing to do with it, for stealing, unknown number. Everyone in the cities of Ai, Makkedah, Libnath, Jarmuth, Gedor, Hormah, Arad, Adelim, Bethel, Tapua, Hefer, Ephes, Lasharon, Madon, Taznak, Megiddo, Kedesh, Jokneam, Dor, Goyim, Tirzah, and all of the Amorites, unknown number. 10,004 men of Bezek, unknown number of people of Jerusalem, Seshai, Ahaman, and Talmai. The people of Zephath, Gaza, Ashkelon, Ekron, and the king of Moab, Eglon, unknown number. The army of Sisera and the men of Karkor, unknown number. Jephthah destroyed 20 cities, unknown number. Samson killed 30 men who solved his riddle, the Philistines, and tons of other people when he died by making the temple fall in on itself, unknown number. 50,100 men of the tribe of Benjamin. Unknown number of people of the tribe of Jabesh Gilead. The Ammonites, Philistines, and Amalekites, unknown number. 331,269 people that David killed. Solomon killed a few people too, 3 to be exact. All of Jeroboam's extended family, unknown number. All of Baasha's extended family, unknown number. 450 prophets of Baal. 793,000 Jewish Baal worshippers. 127,000 Arameans. One man who refused to strike a prophet. I guess that would be a bad prophet he was supposed to strike. Unknown number of Moabites. 172, including Jezebel, Ahab's sons, Joram, their parents, and their friends. Uzziah's relatives, 142. All of Baal's followers, unknown number. Athaliah for killing his or her sons. I'm not sure if Athaliah is a man or a woman. That's 1. Matan, the Baal priest, 1. 10,002 Edomites. I guess that's 10,000 Edomites and their 2 servants. Unknown number
Wait,
of
2 servants for
pregnant...
10,000 Edomites?
10,000 Edomites and 2 servants.
Yeah,
Good job.
wow.
All of the pregnant women in Tirzah.
Oh, that's nice.
Unknown number. Hezekiah killed a bunch of people. That would be 20,000. 500,000 Israelites killed each other. 50,000 Ethiopians. 23,000 Seirites. 510 men of Haman's army. And 75,300 more of the same army. So the grand total comes to more than 399,993 people killed personally by God.
Wow.
Going on the numbers listed and not counting, say, the entire population of the world at the time of Noah, 3 cities, and other such things that were not enumerated in the Bible, and more than 2,017,956 people killed by the followers of God.
Wow.
Not even counting 65 cities they destroyed without seeing fit to give any
The Word of
numbers.
God is indeed a mighty sword.
I've looked for one verse in the Bible, I just can't seem to find it. One verse that said if you don't like him, kill him. I really wish I could find it. Give me a Holy Ghost machine gun, I'll blow your head off.
Wow, Benny.
Whoa.
Well, that was Benny Hinn, folks. And Benny, we got the verses for you. Well, we don't have chapter and verse.
Yeah.
Go look them up.
Well, just Second Kings.
It's in that Bible you're waving around all the time.
Yeah. By the way, folks, we're live. We got phones.
Yeah, we have just heard we've got phones, so there's the number. You can call in and speak to us live on the air. But
Thank
just
you,
to
Brian,
put this in
for
perspective,
fixing.
just to put this in perspective, in the entire Bible, the number of people killed by Satan, according to the Bible itself, let's open that to callers for guesses. How many people does the Bible say Satan killed, and why?
Okay.
So let's see those phone lines light up.
Yeah. And-
Martin, one thing is, for chapter and verses, one good place to look in the Bible for this is the book of Joshua. The book of Joshua is mainly the story of the genocidal grand tour of Canaan Basically, they cross the River Jordan, and God says, kill them all, I'll sort them out.
Yeah.
And they did a tour of 27 cities. And it says over and over, they came to the city of whatever. They killed the men, women, children, horses, and cattle. Not a soul was left breathing. They went on, they come to the next city. They kill all the men, women, children, horses, and cattle. And so after they've done this for 27 cities, killing everything that moves, and there's some extra little glorious bits about chasing people out into the fields and hewing them with the edge of the sword, including old ladies and children.
And horses and cattle.
It's like, this was like Rwanda, right?
Yeah.
People with machetes,
Worse.
chopping up people that they want to take their land.
Yeah, worse than Rwanda.
Right, and then, after they've done this for 27 cities, and one of the things they do is hamstring horses, because they don't like horses, they don't know how to ride horses.
Really? Is that what it was all about?
Right, and so after they do this for 27 cities, killing the men, women, children, horses, and cattle, hamstringing horses, and all these other glorious things, the last 4 cities, that brings it up to 31, they kill the men, women, and children, but they keep the horses and cattle for themselves because they're ready to settle down.
Well, you know, it's Miller time after 26 cities.
I want to remind everyone out there that the atheist community of Austin meets at the Hot Jumbo Bagel Shop near the corner of 5th and Lavaca at 10:30 right after the show. All atheists and atheist-friendly folk are invited down there to hang and have interesting philosophical discussions and scientific discussions of various kinds. But it's not a place for believers to come down and try to convert us. No! That's for the live call-in portion of the show, which we're going to get to right now because we've got phones. Right. Let's go to
Pat on 2.
Pat on line 2. Pat?
Guys, how are you doing today?
You know what we don't have audio here in the
Can you hear me now?
studio.
This is Pat. Can you hear me now?
Hang on, Pat.
Okay. This is Pat. Can you hear me now?
Well, we were told we had phones.
Well, we got.
This is Pat. This is Pat.
We did get that audio clip, so they're clearly able to get us some audio in
the
here.
Speakers like.
What's up, man?
Can you guys hear me out there?
This is Pat.
Oh, okay. There we go. Pat, you still there? Pat?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Pat's talking to me. Cannot hear you.
This is Pat. Can you hear me now?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, we're still not.
Well, once again.
Okay, it's not the volume there, Vic. It's that we're just not getting the caller.
This is Arlo. Can you guys hear me?
While we're
gonna put Pat back on hold.
Yeah.
This is Arlo. Can you guys hear me?
And those of you who are online, please stay on. We will get to you.
We hear Arlo trying to talk to us from the control room, but we can barely hear him.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes. Perfect.
Okay.
What about the callers?
I'm not sure why it is I would be coming through and they would, and everything's set the same. But let's,
all right, they're working on it.
Perhaps Don could turn off, if he turns off that fan, we would have an easier time.
Yeah, that would help if we lost the fan. I think it's cool enough in here now.
One more time.
Okay.
All right, we'll try Pat one more time.
Try Frank on 3.
Wait a minute.
To try Frank.
Frank? Now,
We can't get the callers.
wait a minute. It looks like. Am I supposed to have a green light if they're on the air?
Yeah.
Supposed to have green light if they're on the air.
I'm getting all the green lights lighting up.
You know, there's callers on everywhere.
Okay, there's nobody on. I'm releasing line 2. And according to my box,
Here we go. It is.
I have line 4 on the air because I got a green light.
Okay, you hung up on Pat.
Sorry about that, Pat. We're trying to sort this out. You can call back.
Hey, Jeff, I got, just go to Mark for a second. We'll work this out.
All right,
Yeah,
go ahead, Martin.
while we are, once again, waiting.
Vic, you might want to come in here and look at the phone box.
Yeah,
Tell
while
me
we're
what's
waiting
going
on this, Keith, our station manager, went home, went through the trouble of going home to get some deconversion stories from I guess, a chat room. This is from positiveatheism.org, which once again is another worthwhile website to check out. But these are just stories that I guess people have written in and posted describing why they have rejected religion. And some of them are interesting and worthwhile. And so I'll just read a couple of these, at least until we know what's up with the phones. At 6, I was in church at the age of 6. I was in church playgroup, says Steve in Brisbane, Australia, and I asked why they never shut the church door. The answer was a burglar would never steal for God because God will make him pay. I said, but someone will steal, I know this. They ignored me, so I asked and asked again. I realized they were telling lies, and I simply thought this is all rubbish and never went back. I've been an atheist since I was born and will remain one. So that's a pretty fun story. And here is,
Okay, we don't need the volume to come up in here, do we?
yeah.
We're starting to get a little feedback on the speakers.
And here's another one from a woman who wrote in, and I think this one's very, very eloquent. I gave up my efforts to believe in Christianity when I realized this God had no power. That, quote, he, unquote, was just a jealous, cranky, vindictive, psychopathic despot who demanded obedience without any payoff to his subjects other than a bone-weary existence fraught with pain, guilt, misery, and peril. Thousands of years of praying, rejoicing, and worshiping him has done nothing to enlighten the human condition, and has quenched the human spirit for knowledge and freedom, and has placed the world's burdens on the weak, vulnerable shoulders of his creatures. Testament. His only begotten son, a poor illiterate peasant, most likely born illegitimate into the dreariest of suppressed outcast Jewry, was a savior to the oppressed because he taught them how to be oblivious to intractable misery through passivity. It worked, of course, and what good news it was to the poor, the ill, the socially condemned. They could find joy in their tormented lives, and the life without options suddenly became life with freedom and the passive power of acceptance in their status of God's children. They were now connected to the realm of, quote, love and, quote, power, beyond the yoke of the, quote, law and the Romans. Now about the Holy Ghost, the Spirit who would breathe life into the unsaved and bring all souls into the truth. What a screw-up. Just look at Christianity's history and hang your head in shame if you're a believer. A history of intrigue, murder, mayhem, and constant adjustments to make the unpalatable palatable for the subjects of an all-powerful, quote, kingdom of the cloth. My moniker, she says, for the realm of God's spokesman here on earth. Surely humanity can do better than this God, and so it has when free-thinking men and women have followed their consciences and fought and died for their innate curiosity and used their intellect and emotions, she says, to improve their lives and the lives of their fellow man, not to mention their fierce independence in discovering the answers to so many, quote, mysteries of science, medicine, and technology, and even coming up with new questions. Without sounding too dramatic, have not the greatest strides in human development come from men and women who have refused to buckle under to the church and challenge the status quo? Yes, the church finally capitulated to enlightenment in some areas, when denial would fly in the face of undeniable facts and public opinion, but it was brought forward with heels dragging in the dirt. One may claim that the many martyrs of Christianity who died for their beliefs, but alas, many of them to the furtherance of the word, which seems a shame to die for such an ill-found premise. I can't help but mention America. The church came to this country, hung on the shirt tails of freethinkers and blatantly capitalistic immigrants, and not a few English prisoners sent here to be out of the crown's hair, so to speak, and to this day continues to believe this nation was built on Christianity. I have been general in my statements because to those who have been curious enough to question, challenge, investigate, and conclude on their own through study, observation, and discernment, have most likely come to these same conclusions. I no longer argue with believers. They have too much to lose through honest inquiry, their worldview simplistic, their loyalties often misguided to their questionable values, their morals, some very confusing, their very souls open to doubt, in fact. The beauty in being a free thinker is the freedom to think along any path your questioning little mind may conjure up without fear. Oh, that's very interesting. So, very well done.
Thank you. Do we have another shot at the phones yet?
The phone's going to be working or not?
Yes. Okay, well, false alarm on the phone.
Like to,
yeah, phones, folks.
I'm going to go ahead and give it a shot.
Yeah.
Can I put line 2 on the air?
Try it.
Let's try line 2.
Hello? Is anybody there?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, this is Pat.
We got. Who are we talking to?
This is Pat.
Hi, Pat. Welcome back, man.
Okay, let me turn this TV on. Okay, the reason I call is I have a.
Somebody's messing with the sound.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. The reason I call is I heard the last few times I'd listened to you people talking about the different degrees that these people supposed to have that are false degrees, and a few months ago, maybe 6 or 7 months ago, I guess, I saw one ad in the paper about getting a degree in religion, and so I sent off for it. And at that time, they came back, and I could get a PhD degree in different phases of religion for around $2,500, I believe, was the figure. And I thought that was astonishing, they could do that to get a PhD. But now this has came down. They keep sending me offers back, and the last offer they've sent me here, it's down to $195 for their most prestigious degree.
They just want your money, dude.
Right. It says a PhD in religion, and again, in parentheses, our most prestigious degree. That's $195.
Oh,
actually, last I checked, you could get a PhD for $20 from Fergal University.
Right. They've even topped this, though. They've came back with that. It's half price, and I can buy one and get one free.
lot of our information on those false credentials comes from a book, or a couple of books. One is entitled Bear's Guide to Earning Degrees Non-Traditionally, and another one is Name It and Frame It, New Opportunities in Adult Education and How to Avoid Being Ripped Off by Christian Degree Mills. These are books about where, you know, crummy little fake degrees come from on the cheap.
Pat?
Yes.
Did you happen to notice any offers of gift certificates?
Not on this one, but I can sign up for a prayer line where they'll put 2 people praying for me day and night. It's $25 because it was $50 and they knocked it down to $25. So
$25.
Right. So I'm going to use this in my
Are these
business
people
too.
living in like South Africa or something?
Yeah.
How do they live? If all they do day and night is pray for you, that's $12.50 each. How are they living on
They're
that?
not doing it full time.
I don't know.
Well, he says
day and night.
I challenge that
Once a day,
claim.
once a night.
Well, thanks very much for your call, Pat. You got anything else for us?
That's it. Thanks.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks for putting up with our technical problems.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, and yeah, please call back because as you've just heard, we have
Yeah, callers, we had 2 Franks, right?
Yeah, I had some messages from some of the callers that just couldn't hold on.
Okay, you want to pass those on to us?
Yeah, there was a woman named Sandy that was asking, did you get to the Egyptian body count in your killed by God?
Yeah, we did Egyptians.
Yeah.
The thing is, there's no clear numbers given.
Right.
Right? It's just like all the firstborn sons, and then the Pharaoh and his army.
Right. And one of the Franks was from Houston. He's visiting in his motel room, and he turns on, and he's like, there's nothing like this in Houston, apparently. And he said it was refreshing to see something that wasn't, completely absorbed with religion.
Well,
So
thank
he
you.
was thanking us and giving us a pat on the back, basically.
Thank you, Frank. And if you're still watching, there is a Houston group. In fact, there are several Houston groups now. There's the Houstonians for Secular Humanism group that you might want to look for, and I think that they have toyed around with the idea of doing a TV show, but I'm not real up to date on what they're up to, so I don't know whether that's happened or not. Then there is also a Church of Free Thought. Spun off from the North Texas Church of Free Thought. I don't know if it's called the Houston Church of Free Thought or what, but that's also recently formed in Houston, so you might want to look for those local groups.
Right. And last was a fellow named Mark. He had 2 questions. I thought Paul might be interested in this first one.
Okay.
He said, if you could prove God existed, would you worship him?
Okay, and what's the second question? Let's get both questions.
The second question is, what is the main reason that you do not believe?
Okay, let's take that first reason, or the second question first, right? And throw that open to the audience, because that should be pretty quick. What's the main reason you don't believe? We'll get to the other question, and I'll hand that to you.
Well, actually, the main reason I don't believe is because of the first one. That basically, the God of the Bible is so patently evil that if I did believe in him, I'd have to be against him. The God of the Bible, they say he's a God of love, but you think the Old Testament God's bad. The New Testament God tortures people forever, right? You thought killing millions of people was bad, or hundreds of thousands, or whatever. Torturing billions of people for billions of billions of billions of billions of years is inflicting an infinite amount of suffering. And nothing can possibly justify that. That you thought Hitler and Stalin were bad, here's God, right? And I don't think anybody ever did anything bad enough to deserve an infinite amount of pain.
Well, Pauly Shore did.
Okay, which of his films are we referring to?
Most of them.
Let's go to other people, and let's just go start with the back row. Mark, what's the main reason that you don't believe in God?
The main reason I don't believe in God is because I don't see that a belief in what God represents helps me to make successful predictions about the consequences of actions that I'm contemplating taking.
So you don't buy into the whole thing of if you don't believe in God, you can't have a moral sense, and therefore, without a belief in God, you just go around killing people and setting fires. And
well, why don't we hold off on those kinds of responses until everybody's had a chance?
Well, I was just cross-examining.
Yeah, no, I think somebody here will get to the morality, just like Paul did. Janet?
I guess I would have to say that I don't find the concept of God explains anything usefully. It just
Okay.
it just doesn't help anything that I can tell.
And to me, the idea of God just does not make any sense. I mean, to me, it's obvious that the concept of God was created by people to explain things they didn't understand. And the more we understand, there's just no point. I mean, to me, it's just nonsensical.
You don't want to be put on the spot, do you? Okay, we'll take you. Jenny?
I've never seen God. I've never heard God. I've never seen or heard any evidence that supports God. And because of that, there's no way I can believe in something that I can't get proof of. Main reason.
But let me ask you now the question that the Christian would ask you, which is, you've never seen, well, maybe only through photographs, the planet Neptune. You've never been to the planet Neptune.
Yeah.
You know, you've never walked around and felt the weather patterns and, you know, done what you could do to know what life on Neptune is like. How do you know there's a planet Neptune?
Because there's scientific evidence that supports it.
Yeah, so it comes down to the
Scientific
reliability of the evidence.
What
Plus,
we know
if it turns
so
out
far.
that Neptune exists, it's not going to involve a major change in my lifestyle.
Martin, what's your reason?
Well, I would reinforce pretty much a lot of the points that everyone's made, and particularly Paul's point, but I want to get down to the concept of like small g God in general, and then capital G God as pertains to like the God of Christianity. I don't unequivocally reject the idea that maybe, okay, it's possible that something that could be called a God could possibly exist somewhere, okay? Until I see credible evidence for that, though, beyond just the claims of religion, then I am going to view that with a lot of skepticism. And in terms of the God of Christianity, I think that it can be that is a concept and a definition of a God that can be rejected outright, simply because the definition is fraught with internal that wasn't even a word, contradictions and inconsistencies. I turned both of those words into one word. How weird. For example, the definition that Christianity likes to give of their God is that he is both omniscient and omnipotent. Well, both of those characteristics cannot exist in a single being. Okay, if God is omniscient, which means he knows absolutely everything, including the future. Christians will say that God knows the future with absolute certainty. He knows what exactly will happen everywhere in the universe at 12 o'clock noon on January 1st of the year 3000. Well, if he knows with absolute certainty what will happen at that time in all those places, then he's powerless to change it.
Right.
Which means if God can't do anything, then he's not omnipotent. On the other hand, if he can't change it, if he can change it just on a whim, then he can't know what will in fact happen with absolute certainty.
Right.
You know, so God can't do anything that would surprise himself. He can't do anything himself that he can't predict. And if there's one thing that he can't do, then he can't be omnipotent. So right then and there, just the definition of the Christian God is patently illogical, and I think can be rejected unequivocally. As for other gods, jury's out.
I also want to mention that makes...
Well, I think I'll be a lot briefer than that. But I would like to quote some scientist whose name escapes me a couple of 100 years ago, who was in an audience before the Queen talking about the scientific worldview, and the Queen said, "What about God?" And he said, "Sire, I have no need of that hypothesis."
That was Napoleon.
It was France.
That was Napoleon's astronomer.
I think, was it Laplace?
It might have been.
Sure.
Ashley?
And I just feel that a lot of what God teaches and what religion says is a cop-out. If you have a poor place in life, that does not mean that God put you there and you should stay there. You can struggle and you can work to get out of it. You don't have to suffer in that wallowing hole because God says you should. Climb out.
I'd sort of like to elaborate something I said earlier. I actually did decide I couldn't love God before I decided God didn't exist. I was raised Catholic, and as a child, when I really tried to come to grips with this belief system and found out that if I didn't believe in God or didn't love God, I would burn in hell, then I went, well, I can't love anybody like that. And at the time, I actually did believe in God, and I thought I was going to go to hell because I could not love a being who would torture people forever.
Yeah. I went through something very similar, though. I didn't actually. What I decided was that I couldn't love a God who would get mad at me for thinking, possibly, uppity thoughts about these kinds of questions. If merely questioning his existence was going to be enough to get him to be upset with me, then I couldn't possibly love him. And so I wasn't worried that I didn't love God. I just found a way to free my mind of the threat of hell. And once I was able to do that and started thinking clearly about things based on evidence and not on threats, then I very quickly came to the conclusion that, well, obviously all of this stuff is just made up. I want to respond to one thing that Martin said, and then we will go to calls. And that's the, you never saw Neptune argument. Funny how creationists never hold back from trying to attack evolution on the basis that no human being has ever seen evolution happen, right? Well,
which we have.
If of course they're wrong, but even if they were right, then they can't very well turn around and say, well, this invisible, undetectable God, you can know he exists, even though nobody's ever seen him.
Yeah.
Just one of the ways in which they'll make whatever argument is most convenient for them at the moment and have no standards of evidence whatsoever.
Trying to explain a mystery with a mystery.
Let's go to callers.
Aaron,
are you there?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Just barely.
Okay.
What's up, Aaron?
How's it going, Jeff?
Oh, it's that Aaron. How you doing?
Yeah, I thought I'd call and play God's advocate.
All right, go ahead.
All right, so it sounds to me like what you guys are objecting to is not so much like a concept of God, but it is the actions of zealots and fanatics and their actions that they've taken in the name of God. Because, just like as with anything, the definition of God is different from person to person. So, your objections, which are quite valid, are the fact that there have been countless suffering and murder and all this committed in the name of God, but heck, it's been committed in the name of patriotism, or it's been committed in the name of cultural differences. It's been committed in the name of economics. I mean...
Yeah, and I'm against some of those things too.
Right,
But I think, to be fair, about half of what you just heard is that kind of stuff, right? About half of that is responding to the question of, we had two questions, right? The first question was, why don't you believe? And the second question was, I got the questions in the reverse order, but the other question was, even if you thought he existed, would you worship him? And you're responding to the answers to the question, if he existed, would you worship him? The second, the other question was, why don't we believe in him in the first place? And that stuff, there's absolutely no evidence.
Right, no, and I understand that. I mean, I think God is kind of like anything that gives somebody comfort. I mean, and by the way, there's been plenty of wonderful people and good people who believed in God. Albert Einstein believed in God.
Yes, but you've got to be very clear about what he meant when he said God.
Well, and that's part of my point, is that the definition of God changes. It's not the same. People, back in ancient times thought the world was flat. Well, guess what? The world's not flat. Well, maybe people back in ancient times thought God was this vengeful old man with a long beard that says, I'm going to smite you. And we now understand that that's not maybe what God is. And I'm
my problem with that is that if you you still have people today who are taking that exact same thing and saying this is the literal word of God.
And I have another problem with that.
Okay.
My problem with that is, show me how they figured that out.
How did
they, if in Old Testament times they believed in a God that wanted them to go out and murder people and take their cities, right? And in more recent times, they don't believe in that kind of a God. How did they find out that this God actually does exist, but wants different things? How on earth did they find that out? Or aren't they just... Well, doesn't that just really illustrate that we're becoming more civilized, and it's what we want?
Yeah.
Right, but I don't think that a civilized scientific modern society is necessarily and should be necessarily at odds with the concept of a greater...
That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking, if this God actually exists, how are people finding out what it wants? You see, then it's not. Then there's still no evidence that the God exists. What you have evidence of then is that people pretty much always do what they want, and they justify it by saying that that's what their God wants.
Well, right, but what if your belief in God or your concept of God, which I have a lot of friends who are pagan, who are Wiccan, and they believe in an idea of a God that's not an intrusive, thou shalt do this kind of God, but more of a sort of a general, more esoteric concept of there's this spirit or an intelligence to the universe. It may not necessarily want anything or direct us to do anything, but in general, it's out there, it's benevolent, etc. I mean, that is just as a legitimate definition of God as the Christian, Catholic, patriarchal,
sure.
God with a long white beard.
Agreed, and any of us would be happy to believe in that God the instant there's the slightest evidence that he exists.
Because it seems like the
point. Well, no, at the instant there's compelling evidence that he exists. Let me rephrase.
Because it does say that it seems like what you're saying right now is, well, these people think that God is like this, and these people think that God's like this, and these other people think this, and everyone kind of has their own idea, and that's fine. But it sounds like really you are in fact essentially stating that that's all God is. He's just this idea that people have in their heads, and that of a thing that they can latch onto to make them happy.
Well, okay. Well, for the record,
and that doesn't point to an actual sentient being that exists in some other form that we haven't quite, found yet. You know what I mean? It just says what you just said. God's an idea.
Absolutely, I agree with that. But I guess then my question would be: do you feel that if somebody wants to believe in some idea of God, maybe an idea that is not this a God of retribution and murder, etc., why is that necessarily a bad thing? That's
okay. I'd really like to respond to that.
Deciding to be a vegetarian or deciding that tofu's good for you or whatever.
Here's my response to that.
Okay.
Okay. One, I think you can justify good behavior without reference to a God.
Okay.
And two, the thing about gods, okay, is that as soon as you get into faith, right, where you're believing in something strongly in spite of the fact that there really isn't very good evidence to justify it, as soon as that becomes an okay way of looking at things, the floodgates are opened, and any old nonsense that you want to believe that makes you happy, it becomes justified. And I just think that's incredibly dangerous for our society.
Well, yeah,
people should believe in things only when there is sufficient evidence to justify it. Making you feel good is just not sufficient grounds.
But again, I mean, I agree with mostly with what you're saying, but I think that also opens up the way for a little bit of social or cultural imperialism, in that we should treat other cultures, other people with the same amount of dignity and respect that we expect to be treated ourselves.
And Christianity has a lousy history of doing that.
However, I would argue that there would be people that could take what you just said, Jeff.
Yeah.
If there's no evidence, no evidence that we can see that treating other people is necessary, or certain groups of other people is necessarily good or beneficial for us in any way, then why should we do it? Why not have a whole new wave of imperialism, a whole new wave of fascism, a whole new... Because
the thing about rationalism and the thing about...
see no evidence
just a minute.
For treating these groups gives them any benefit. They see no evidence of that. We all see it, but they don't.
I'm not sure where you just went with that, but boy, I had a response and now I've lost it.
Well, I think the evidence shows that there's good people and there's bad people in every culture at every time. It's a natural part of human nature to be able to be self-interested and selfish, and to be able to be altruistic. And religion has never really made people be good people. It gives them a label to attach to it. Every religion gives people a label to attach to the normal human tendency to be moral. And I don't understand why we're supposed to respect this kind of belief system where clearly it doesn't work at getting at the truth.
Okay.
At best, it's an ink blot.
It's important since Aaron keeps bringing up imperialism. Okay, here's the thing about rationalism and about accuracy of beliefs, right? Is it can look a whole lot like totalitarianism, right? Things are a certain way, right? Facts are the facts are one way and not some other way. And so if you have a commitment to getting as close to those actual facts as you really can, and if that's your priority rather than just mollifying yourself with some set of beliefs that makes you feel good, that can look to outsiders like imperialism. But it's not. Okay, you can't. I don't see that there is any sense to applying okay, we're going to be gone in 20 seconds. There's no sense to applying an emotional attack on it simply being right. Okay. And that was a bad way to end it, Aaron. Sorry. Thanks for your call. Folks, thanks for watching. We're out of time.
Christians, we don't hate you.
We don't hate you. We just think you're wrong.